Next is Senator Thune, and then we want to hear from Senator Cantwell, who's been doing extraordinary work on these issues for a long, long time. Senator Thune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all of our witnesses this morning. Mr. Conter, as you know, we're here to talk about the role of tax incentives in affordable housing. I'd like to start out by asking you about tax-related disincentives to affordable housing. Specifically, I'm talking about tariffs, which are de facto taxes on softwood lumber imports from Canada. Softwood lumber is a critical input to home construction, and the current 17.9% tariff rate on these imports increases U.S. home building costs, harms affordable housing, and fails to increase supply. Earlier this week, Senator Menendez and I sent a letter to the Department of Commerce and to USTR urging the Biden administration to prioritize lumber trade to reduce housing costs. So, Mr. Conter, do you agree that reducing tariffs on softwood lumber would help make home construction and home ownership more affordable?
Thank you for the question, Senator, and thank you and Senator Menendez for your leadership on this issue. Yes, I do believe reducing tariffs on imports of Canadian softwood lumber would make home construction and home ownership more affordable. Lumber represents one of the most significant material inputs to the construction of a home. Trade measures that act as a tax on these inputs are necessarily going to increase the cost of the final product. Conversely, anything that you can do to remove these trade barriers is going to reduce the cost of the final product. And if I could also, Senator Wyden earlier said, what kind of regulations are outdated? Our trade policies go back to the Smoot-Hawley Act. So if you think that maybe if they're not working, if we can't get agreements and we're structurally built in, the structure built into the review process of that trade program does not have the effect of us being able to act quickly on modifications to trade policies, then maybe we need to look at the overall picture of how we create our trade policy.
Thank you, and I was going to follow up with a question about what we could do in a more general sense and how a renewed U.S.-Canada softwood lumber agreement could have benefit affordable housing, but I think you kind of addressed that in your last answer. I would just say hopefully that the administration takes timely action on these issues. These are practical, bipartisan ways to help with affordable housing and the U.S. housing community at large. Let me just speak, if I might, for a minute to South Dakota. Housing availability, affordability are a huge issue for South Dakotans. I hear about these issues all the time from constituents, especially in communities like Rapid City, which is quickly expanding. And with construction costs and supply prices significantly inflated, this is making it more and more difficult to start or complete new housing projects. And according to the National Association of Realtors, the average cost of housing in Midwestern states from 2013 to 2021 increased by more than $80,000. So if I might, Ms. Wade, you touched on this in your written testimony, but could you share your insights into the U.S. housing deficit, both in terms of data and how it's impacting families and livelihoods across the country?
Yes, Senator, that is a great question. By one estimate, and by the way, I've seen this estimate doubled, we have a shortage of 3.8 million homes in the U.S., which is staggering. I think it's almost hard to grasp. There are a lot of things that have to come together to address this urgent need, both at the federal level, so the legislation this committee is discussing, things that you have worked on, Senator, at the state, local level, as well as with the private sector. I think the low-income housing tax credit brings together all of those, various components, and is one way to, effectively increase the supply of affordable housing. It also takes, a lot of reform at the local level when it comes to things like zoning, when it comes to things like permitting delays and, other policies at the local level. And all of this kind of has to be viewed holistically as part of the housing ecosystem in order to truly solve this problem.
Well, and I would, just to follow up, my time's expiring here, but I just want to say, with respect to that, one of the things we've heard from the South Dakota Housing Development Authority is just that those who participate in these multiple federal housing programs simultaneously, like the low-income housing tax credit program, combination of programs at HUD, the rules governing these programs are not uniform. And they can create challenges for state housing authorities and also disincentivize property managers to participate in some of these programs. So I hope that that's one of the things, Mr. Chairman, too, that we can contemplate trying to work with these programs to ensure that they are functional and workable and don't impose these heavy burdens, compliance requirements that makes it very difficult for those out there that are tasked with trying to create more affordable housing options are not buried in a mountain of federal paperwork. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We are